Welcome back, everyone. I hope that, though I don't hope your Yom Kippur is easy, I hope that your fast is easy if you're fasting. Um, Thanks for being here. We flew in Alana Zeitchik from New York, and she's with us especially today. And it's really great to have you. I just want to give you a little background about Alana and also let you know that first Alana is going to be speaking, and then I'll ask her some questions, and then I'll take the mic and go down to the sanctuary floor and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. And we'll be done before 3 o'clock, and then you'll have a 15-minute stretch until the mincha service at 3:15. She's also going to be speaking at 3:15 at the beginning of the service, but a different type of talk that she'll be giving. So Alana Zeitchik, from Brooklyn, New York. Her advocacy is rooted in personal tragedy. 6 of her family members were taken hostage from kibbutz Nir Oz, which transformed her into a public voice for her family and humanity. And she's written for the New York Times. She's featured in the documentary Torn, the Israel-Palestine poster war. And she uses her social media platform to connect with a diverse community across generational and political lines. And she'll be speaking now about facing our October 7th trauma with courage and resolve. Oh no, that's what she's speaking in the afternoon. Now she'll be speaking about...
Well, they're both very related,
Yeah.
but I will be speaking about Ometz Lev and through my story. Really, I'm going to tell you my story, and that's why I wanted to sit down and really be in community and tell this as a story for you to witness and hear and to support me as well. I want to give you what I've learned through this journey I've been on of advocacy since October 7th, but also... Is this better? Okay. It's really important for me to be with community, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. This is my first trip to LA since October 7th, so you're the first LA community I have spoken to, so thank you for that. I want to start by telling you about me and me before October 7th and where I come from, and just give you some personal background of who I am. So I'm Israeli American. I was born here in New Jersey. My dad is from Brooklyn. My grandparents were the children of immigrants who lived in Brownsville. And my mother came from Israel. My mom is Yemenite, and so that side of my family is Yemenite. My grandparents, Sarah and Avram, came in 1949 to Israel on Operation Magic Carpet and built a life in Israel, brick by brick, one from complete poverty, right? From refugees to complete poverty. And my mom is a first-generation Israeli and came to America and married a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn. And they had me, and I feel very connected to both of these identities. And they're very important to who I am, these two sides of me, but also very challenging, I will say. And luckily, because in my Israeli side, I have a huge family in Israel. My mom is one of 5, like a lot of Yemenite families. And I was able to grow up there back and forth between New York and Israel. And I have a huge family with lots of cousins. And despite the distance, we were always very, very close. And I think it was the distance actually that made us closer, because the time we spent together was always so valuable. And all my life, I have obviously known the fears of that they have, their fears and the risks of living in Israel. And I grew up I remember during the Gulf War when my Savta and Saba were issued gas masks. And I remember the second Intifada. I remember asking my cousins not to not to take the bus. And this has been a huge part of my life. And I think for a lot of us Jews, right, we're very familiar with that. But I've never personally experienced it really until now. And on October 7th, my worst fears came true. I mean, I can't even say that they came true because I never could have imagined such a thing would happen. So I was here in New York on that day, and I woke up like everyone else and saw the news. But in my case, my cousin Sharon and her husband and their twins were living on Kibbutz Nir Oz. And we had known for a while now, right, that they were at risk given the rockets were coming from Gaza, but it never was like this. And we checked the cousins group chat, which we have with all my cousins, and there was nothing from her. But usually she was the first person to say, I'm okay, everything is okay. So this was kind of the first moment in this experience for me, whereas everyone was watching these images on the news, people like Naama Levy, Shani Luke, these images, Noah Argamani, and all of this destruction that we were seeing on the news, I was wondering where my family was and if they were okay. And I started quickly sharing on social media. I didn't know what else to do but tell people that my family was missing, that something was happening to them, and that it wasn't resistance, because I was already seeing people in my own community in Brooklyn calling it resistance. And I knew that what was coming was going to be very hard. But as the day progressed, I learned more information. My mom called me wailing and screaming that they are missing. And not only was it Sharon, her husband, David, their 3-year-old twin girls, Emma and Yuli, but also my cousin Danielle, who is Sharon's sister, and her 5.5-year-old daughter, Emilia. They happened to be visiting for the holiday. So in this moment, the way I described it, I was in utter shock, fear like I've never known, and there was a powerlessness that emerged. And my heart just shattered into a million pieces. And I was just a person living in New York. I wasn't a public advocate or activist, but I had to do something. And so I started to speak up. And I started by sharing on social media, and I promised that I would scream to the ends of the earth for them. Those are the words I used then, and they're still the words I use today. And at that point, people started to pay attention, of course. And then it was my way of coping, right? The only way for me to continue was to speak up, to do something about it. And I got noticed, I got put on the news, and then by October 13th, I spoke at the UN. I found a PR team, which actually is someone from here, from your community. His name is Stefan Friedman, and he sent his kids to the school here, and his PR firm became mine, pro bono, to help me talk to the whole world about my family. And I spoke at the UN. I went on the news from here to Romania, as I say, and I just wouldn't stop talking about them. And during this time, the fracture in our world here in America was very evident, right? There were people putting up posters and then tearing them down. People were tearing down posters of my baby cousins. People were putting Hitler mustaches on the faces of my 3-year-old cousins, and telling my brother that my cousin Emilia, who was 5.5, looked like a white colonizer. And this is all happening around me in the real world. There was a lot of grief that I had from the progressive community who couldn't help me hold this grief, which is what I eventually wrote my op-ed about in the New York Times. And I decided I had a choice in that moment. I could choose to give in and let all of this chaos and divide sweep me away, or I could focus on my family. And that's what I chose to do. I chose to focus on them and what mattered most which was bringing them home. And my message on the news was the hostages must be the only priority, the number one priority. And I knew who I was talking to. To be clear, I was speaking to the American government and the Israeli government. At no point did I find it necessary for me to speak to the captors, to those who brutalized them and stole them brutally to be taken hostage, children. So I focused my energy where it mattered, on those who were responsible for bringing them back. And I blocked out all the noise. And at the same time, of course, the Jewish community was an incredible source of support for me at the time. And then by November, the end of November 2023, there was a deal. And I watched, finally, my cousins, Sharon and Danielle and Amelia and Emma and Yuli come home. And the way I describe it often is like we all were watching it on the news. And for everyone, it was this amazing moment of Israeli hostages being released. But for me, it was really the people I love being returned from hell. Unfortunately, though, David, who is Sharon's husband, he's still in Gaza today. So I knew that the job wasn't done. It wasn't over when they came back. And, you know, we had our moment of celebration, but then it was time to push again, to say to these governments, you need to make a deal. We need to focus on diplomacy. Of course, I also was witnessing what was happening in Gaza, and I never shied away from speaking about Palestinian suffering. It was always very important for me that we're not going to be pit against each other, that their children were suffering, and I wasn't going to pretend like they weren't. So that was always a big part of my advocacy, and I wanted to continue with it, so I did. And after they came home, there was a really pivotal moment for me where things turned within the Jewish community. And I want to talk a lot more about that right now because I think we're all feeling this. There was a moment in December 2023 when the IDF killed 3 hostages who were, I think, shirtless and waving white flags. And for me, this was beyond soul-crushing because David was still there, his brother Ariel was still there, there were so many people still there at the time, and I couldn't understand why I seemingly was the only person around me who really cared about this. It seemed like it was sort of uh-oh to some people in the Jewish community. And I couldn't understand it because for me, any threat against my family is a threat. I don't care if it's Hamas or if it's the Israeli government. So for me, this started to become a question I asked, what's going on in our community? I was obviously already very well aware of the kind of anti-Zionist Jewish movement that deeply frustrated me as well. And I saw into this fracture in our community, besides the greater world, yes, but our community is like a microcosm of that. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I decided to sort of think about what is the choice I'm going to make next? How am I going to keep advocating for David, for all of the hostages with this very divided community? And that's when I turned more towards Israel and to Israelis and to what they were saying and to what they were capable of doing, which is criticizing their own government. And I followed their lead, and that's kind of something I have done since the beginning, decided to follow their lead, the lead of my family in Israel, lead of the Israeli people. That's who my alliance is with. It's with the people always. And by March of 2023, I decided to come out very, very loudly against the Israeli government or in holding them accountable, which I hadn't done in the beginning. In the beginning, I was very scared. I didn't know what I could or couldn't say because I had to ask some people to bring my family back. So in March of 2023, I decided to write an op-ed in the Forward explaining how I was worried that David would never come home as long as Prime Minister Netanyahu was in power. And I started to share more with the Jewish community here about the Israeli protest movement, the pro-democracy movement, the heart and soul of what I know. It's what I grew up with. I grew up with that Rabin Israeli society. And I decided to champion that and seek out new relationships, new people. I had lost so many. I know so many of us have lost friends or colleagues or people we thought we could count on. And so I looked for new people. I found Israeli activists in New York who were peace activists. I found Israelis who were part of the pro-democracy movement, and they had been already doing that before October 7th in New York. And I found Palestinians. I looked for Palestinians because I couldn't bear the hopelessness and the division and the polarization that we are inundated with constantly. Every day I open up my phone and I see someone on this side hates me, someone on this side hates me too, and I just needed to find some solace. And I found it with some people who were like-minded in the sense that they were comfortable, or they were more comfortable with the uncertainty and with the discomfort, with the difficult dialogue and holding space for my pain and Palestinian pain. And I needed all of that. And I started to build a whole new network of relationships and direction in my advocacy that would allow me to keep being a force and a voice for my family at the forefront, for the Israeli people at the forefront. But also, it was really important for me to talk about humanity and where we're going in our community and what we want for our own values. Because I felt that, standing in my values and remaining in my integrity would be the best way to represent my family. I wanted to represent them in my highest self, my best self. And that's what I tried to continue doing. And this got harder and harder in the Jewish community as the American election came about, because I was also vocally supportive of Kamala Harris, and I started to receive genuine hatred from Jews. And more than anything, that has been the most painful thing I have experienced in regards to kind of the communal fractures that I've seen, that I've experienced. Having people in the Jewish community turn on me has been very painful. And it's not the majority, and I wouldn't dare to say that it is, but it's a very vocal kind of agent of chaos voice that is very strongly aligned with the Israeli government. And it's been really heartbreaking for me, but I do feel like we have to keep trying to start mending these things. And I felt I had to continue, I had to speak up. And it's very hard and I come from the sort of Israeli mindset, even that is like, you say certain things in Hebrew and other things you don't say in English. And I get it. It's hard because when we speak up, when we say things that are about the Israeli government, people take it out of context. It makes us very vulnerable here in the US. But for me, my family was more important than that for me. And I also found ways to speak carefully and thoughtfully. And I thought a lot about what I was saying, how I was saying it, so that I wasn't, damaging all of the Jewish community, but I was still remaining true to myself and speaking truth to power, which really matters a lot to me and I think is an important value that, we have. And I didn't let myself be afraid of speaking up in ways that I wouldn't have before this said these things, because I still worry of who's going to tokenize me or take my words out of context. And it does happen, it happens, but I can't control it. And I think that's the thing that when we think about Yom Kippur and this moment, as I've been reflecting, and your sermon was so close to me and everything I'm speaking about, because it's this lack of control that I discovered I don't have it. I don't have the control over whether my family was going to live or die. I didn't have control over whether I would get them back. I still, in this moment, don't have control over whether David will come home. But I can make choices that help me try as best as I can to do good, to make change, to do something with this platform I now have. Because I don't know if any other way would be too fearful. It would be I don't want to give in to the fear, basically. And, also, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says the very famous, quote that I'm sure you all know, "Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od ve'ikar lo lefachad klal." The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the essential thing is to have no fear at all. And that is a gift I was given by another rabbi who started a project called the Narrow Bridge Project that I'm now executive director of, which is for Jewish activists of very polarizing divides to come together and go through a curriculum and have dialogue. And I decided to do this because I felt that when I look at our world and all of the different fractures that I want to put together, because I'm like a problem solver, I really want to put the pieces back together. But I have to start in the Jewish community. And I think we have to start within the Jewish community if we want to see any change outside of it. And I'll end there.
Thank you. Thank you, Alana. I'm going to push you on some of the things that you said. What do you say to American Jews when they say to you, Alana, you're American, you live here. Our job is just to support Israel. We just need to support the government, and what you're doing is not okay.
So a few things. One, my job, and I think our job, is to support the Israeli people, first and foremost. And they're not a monolith. They have very differing views, and I'm not going to say that I agree with all of them. I don't. But the important thing I say is that as Jews who love Israel, it is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to criticize the government responsibly and from a place of love. Because if we are not the ones to do it, then we leave it in the hands of those who are careless at best or anti-Semitic at worst. And so we can't control the anti-Semitism in the way that we want to, but it is our job to be the ones, the arbiters of truth, and the ones to stand up for the Israeli people, whether it is against Hamas or whether it is against the Israeli government, and to do it in such a way that puts them at the forefront of that kind of advocacy.
And you mentioned that you started finding new friends, people, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, who are working together and creating a new path forward. If you could answer two parts of my question. One is, what do you say to people who say those are just dreamers and it's not reality anymore? And you saw after October 7th how people hate us. And yes, of course you can find those kind of people who want to work together, but that's not the majority. They're minority and they're just dreamers. And that's part one. And part two is, what is their dream? Like, what are you hearing from these people who are forging a different path forward? What's their dream?
Okay, so I've made friends with a range of people. Some of them are squarely peace activists who do joint activism. And I've focused, by the way, the majority of my focus is on people from the region, not here in the diaspora in regards to Palestinians, except for maybe a few. And so a lot of them are people who live in the region or are born and raised in the region, whether it's East Jerusalem, West Bank, or Gaza, Haifa, etc. And they all have, they don't all agree on everything. Some of them are very much about joint activism. Some of them are focused a lot more on Palestinian solidarity and trying to mobilize Palestinian civil society, or on trying to create a voice within Palestinians that is not tied to the resistance or to Hamas or the PLO. And then there are some who are more like your logical and pragmatic types. And so I like this range because I want to hear, and some of them, like my friend Ahmed, he is an American, but he's from Gaza until he was 15. He came here. And he has an org through the Atlantic Council called Realign for Palestine. And he's very anti-Hamas. And he and I went together to meet with Ilhan Omar and to share our stories. He's lost 33 family members in Gaza. And we spoke together to her as a united front. But he's very pragmatic.
The senator from?
The congresswoman from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Who's very, contentious in our community.
Yes.
And So he is very pragmatic, and he doesn't really make me uncomfortable. There's nothing he says that really pushes my buttons. Or there are other people, though, who I've put myself in front of who say things that I don't like, that make me uncomfortable sometimes. We use different language. My Palestinian friends are saying genocide. I'm not. I'm okay with that, though. And I know for some people that sounds crazy. But if I can't get past that, I can't connect with them. I can't build a relationship with them. I can't learn from them. And I can't find like the shared humanity that we do have and the shared grievances that we have. So I think that what they all want, what they all focus on, and I'll say the thread that they all have is about shared humanity. Some are a lot more focused on liberation for Palestinians and anti-occupation. Some are more focused on joint peace, which is where I kind of live in that space, where I really focus a lot on groups like Omdim B'Yachad, standing together, and I work with the Parent Circle, which is the bereaved family forum for both Palestinian and Israelis who are bereaved. And I focus a lot on the joint work. And then there are those who are taking more of like the policy approach for two-state solution and type of alliances with the PLO even. And so there's really a range, and that has been honestly really important for me to see because I don't know if they're a minority actually.
I know that you've also spent a lot of your time going to college campuses. Can you tell us what that experience has been like? Can you share some stories around that? When have you felt like you've been successful? When have you felt like, that was like bad?
Well, I haven't gone to enough college campuses, I will say. I'm in a film called Torn, which is something that really focuses on like the zeitgeist of kind of winter 2023 around the poster war and this kind of proxy war happening here in the US between pro-Israel activists and pro-Palestinian activists. And I was like, witness to that, and it affected me. But so we've been touring that around the country, and we've gone to a lot of universities, but we've gotten a lot of Jewish turnout for them in a lot of places. But Harvard was actually a really great one. We did a screening at the Kennedy Center, or the Kennedy School. And we had people from all over, from different countries, and it was, I think there, it was tame. Like there wasn't anyone there that was problematic. They had a lot of great questions, but then like a place like the New School, the SJP chapter protested against it.
The New School's in New York City.
Yeah, we had to have security there. They actually just recently are posting some things about us about how our film is Hasbara. Like it was really bad there. Each campus is a little bit different. I know a lot of people at Columbia, and I haven't done Columbia yet. And my goal with Narrow Bridge is actually to bring a cohort to Columbia, to relaunch it at Columbia as the first cohort there, because I think it's kind of ground zero of a lot of this. But I meet with a lot of students, Jewish students on the campus, and a lot of them are actually doing better work than I thought behind the scenes that we can't see. But I really feel for Jewish students on campus, and I'm now advising a group called Jewish on Campus and helping them in the work that they're doing as like a grassroots group.
You mentioned that sometimes you dialogue and meet with people that you really don't agree with, some Palestinians, some Arabs, even some Jews that you don't agree with. And I wonder how you navigate that, because sometimes what happens is that our Jewish community says, she's talking to someone who's pro-Hamas, or she's talking to someone who is, for a one-state solution, and forget it, I'm not going to listen to Alana because that's who she's aligning herself with. How do you address that?
Well, first off, I very rarely met anyone pro-Hamas in my experience. I've seen them on the internet. They have bullied me, for sure. I got bullied on Twitter so bad I had a breakdown by pro-Hamas people. But in person, I haven't really met them. I do some behind-the-scenes allyship and ally building that isn't at the forefront. There's a very popular children's educator that people think is against us, but she's not. And I've made a relationship with her behind the scenes, and it gives me an opportunity to then text her when she says something or does something that I'm like, hey, this is how the Jewish community is going to think about it. Here's what you want to think about instead. This person maybe you don't want to align with or promote because they're not actually what you think they are. And it gives me a line to these people behind the scenes. I don't need it to always be in front, but it's hard. I can't work with her publicly because too much backlash. But then an important one has been in the Jewish community. So I've recently started to make a lot more alliances on the Jewish kind of far left. I mean, I'm still, I guess, I don't even call myself progressive anymore. I think I'm more independent at this point. I don't even like the labels. I know what my values are, and I know who I can trust. And so I do love certain politicians like Brad Lander, and I have started to kind of build more relationships in the anti-Zionist Jewish world. I've made my social media also very open for Jews. I've made it very clear that it is a safe space if you are an anti-Zionist Jew, that I'm here to listen and to be in relationship with them. I've started to make relationships with some, if not now, kind of leaders in New York. And we have also, once again, it's having these behind the scenes direct lines and these relationships that are really important to me so that we can start to rebuild and work towards unity again.
I'm going to open it up for some questions from all of you. And we only have these 2 mics, so be patient with me walking around. Questions for Alana? Yes.
Oh, stand up. She's bossing me around. You mentioned that you grew up with sort of this Rabin era feeling or ethos in Israel. And with your family and your friends in Israel, do you feel, from not being there and from the news and the people who are in control of the government, it feels like that's slipping away, that any kind of progressive Zionism or slipping away, that we might be ending up with a right-wing theocracy. And I'm wondering if you have any other sense of that you could share with us.
You mean about like the dynamics within Israeli politics? Yeah. So I think, after so many, I'll say like how we got here is a long story, right? But when you look back at it, it makes a lot of sense. So many failed, like Oslo failed. The second Intifada created a vacuum for Netanyahu and for this kind of right wing to emerge and come back and take power in a way that really is just, when you look back at who started the country, it's nothing like what my mother grew up with. And I am really involved in like left-wing Israeli politics, so I'm a big fan of Yair Golan, and I think he is bringing back that kind of progressive liberal Zionist vision, labor-led vision for Israel and for its politics. So he is amazing. Naama Lazimi is an MK that I love, who I now know really well, as well as Gilad Kariv. So these are like 3 politicians who I'm following very closely, and I'm in touch with their teams and hope to work with them. And I think one of the things I want to do is keep elevating their voices and what they have to say. I always say, like, Netanyahu speaks really well in English. We need to hear from more Israelis with bad accents, and they have that. And so I'm really encouraged by them. They're increasing in the polls, still a minority, but based on what's polling, it looks like they may get between 10 to 14 seats, 14 on the high end, but hopefully at least 10.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about your relationship with this teacher, which at the end of talking about your relationship with her, you said I'd kind of back channel it. It would be very difficult for that to be public somehow, that you were working with her. So I just wanted to say, like, as a person who has a platform, and obviously a lot of people who read you and follow you, is there some benefit to you talking about having relationships with people that you're trying to keep hidden, but bringing them to the forefront to say, here's somebody who feels this way and I feel this way, but we're making peace with each other as a, symbol to the people who are following you, as opposed to being concerned about it.
Yes, and there is. The reason I haven't with her specifically is partially because my family, because David is still in captivity, and I'm still very much representation of my family. And I was worried about two things. If I was to work with her, we would be focused on the children in my family and their story. And she has a lot of people who are very anti-us, and I won't subject my cousins to any negative attention. And there could also be a backlash from the Jewish community that could affect my cousin. And I just refuse to put her through anything of that sort. And this is one of the choices I've made throughout this. Like, when do I focus on my platform and what I'm building, what I think is really valuable? And when do I hold back on behalf of the people that matter more to me than my own personal platform? So one day I will with her, and probably many other people too. Hopefully I'll have a podcast one day, but just not right now.
Hi, I had a question about your advocacy in the U.S. and putting pressure on Israel. Do you see that as working with American politicians to withhold aid to Israel to put pressure on them? Like, do you see that as part of helping the Israeli people?
It's a hard question. I would never advocate for some sort of blanket stopping of aid to Israel. I would never advocate against Iron Dome funding, defensive funding. I have questioned where my place is in regards to the current administration and offensive arms in regards to this war. But I don't think it is in my benefit to do that. I've thought about it, but I don't really have like a firm stance on it yet. It's really like a constant ongoing conversation. I think about it through, of course, how it's affecting Palestinians, but I think about how it's affecting Israelis and how that will work for us in the long run as well. So it's not an easy answer. I don't have one, but it's something that's on my mind that I question a lot.
Other questions? Yeah.
Hi. I have a more micro question, but how are your cousins and the kids doing since being home? What does that look like? What is their trauma and recovery look like?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I didn't tell you guys the whole story because it's very intensive for me to talk about their actual experience and their trauma. I'm always happy to answer questions about it. But it's for Danielle and Amelia. They are doing a little bit better in general. Danielle came back from captivity. You guys may have remembered her from the propaganda video that came out where she was screaming now, which kind of became like this rallying cry. My cousin Danielle has always had a voice kind of like me. We're like eldest sisters of the family, so we're similar. And she came home from captivity and became an advocate quickly. And she poured herself into talking about her experience, to advocating for the hostages, going on the news, and she's doing pretty well. They're well taken care of from like a mental perspective. Sharon, on the other hand, is living in what I call this like unbearable space between hope and horror, where you just don't know. And she's a single mother to the girls, who are now 5 years old. They were three when they were taken captive. And they've celebrated 2 birthdays without their father. And it is a constant struggle to explain to them why he's not home. We don't have any answers for kids that age. Sharon sometimes tells them, like, he's waiting in a really long line. Or I swear, she sometimes makes up these stories for them to help them grasp what's happening. And they'll ask, like, does Abba not love me anymore? Why isn't he coming home? And she has to deal with this often. But the positive is the community in Israel. There's nothing like it. It is why I'm so connected to Israel. It's what I always saw I didn't have here was the level of community they have there. And so Sharon is now living back with the kibbutz members in a different town, and she has such support from that community, and I'm grateful for that. And yeah, so it's really hard. It's not good, but she's coping, and she's the best mother I could ever imagine.
That breaks all of our hearts, I'm sure. My final question is, I quoted Rabbi Karen Kedar when I was leading the minyan today during Unatana Tokef, and said, how are we supposed to live, in this kind of world today? And Rabbi Kedar said, end your prayer with a question mark. Who shall live and who shall die? Will righteousness and prayer and doing good deeds help us? What is this world? Why are we here? How can we make a move? How can we make our lives any better? And I wonder, Alana, what are your questions that you're leaving us with that we really need to ask ourselves and consider and push ourselves to just ask? Maybe we won't have the answers like my sermon. Maybe we haven't found yet. But what are the questions that you want us to ask?
I think I focused a lot of this right around speaking up. And so I want to encourage you to think about your words and ask yourself some of the questions I asked myself. What do I want to say? What do I want people to know? What do I want them to see when I speak to them? Like, what do I want them to understand? And use that as a guide to actually shape what it is, how you communicate with others about what you're going through or what someone else is going through that you want to advocate for. Ask yourself these really important questions of like, what do I want them to understand from me and who I am? And then use that to inform how you use your words, because they're really important.
And how do you use that question with, how do you center yourself in terms of listening to people that you really disagree with? What are the questions you ask yourself in order to be able to hear them?
I think I asked myself, am I going to be okay? And I really asked that, like, can I handle this? Am I going to be okay with this? For me, the answer is usually yes, because it hasn't worked out another way. But I sort of challenge myself about my own inner strength. Do I have enough inner strength to tolerate and to reach out to someone who I don't agree with, because maybe what comes out the other end will be a lot better.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Give yourself a 20-minute or so break. We're going to start at 3:15 for Mincha, and Alana will be with us again speaking about Ometz Lev, about strength after the trauma of October 7th. And we have flowers to pass out also for you to smell and revive your soul as the day of Yom Kippur continues. So thank you.